In 2003, a working musician walked into a small American club and broke every physical rule of live sound. There were no monitor wedges on the floor, there were no massive PV or JBL cabinets flanking the stage, there was no connection to the house mixing board. Instead, the musician carried only a single sleek black column and dropped it directly behind the microphone. The system was the Bose L1 Classic. It retailed for over $2,000, more than a complete traditional PA setup. Yet independent musicians lined up to buy it, while traditional sound engineers watched in anger as their control over the room vanished. The paradox was immediate. A speaker system designed to free the solo American gigging musician from hauling heavy gear still relied on a bass unit so incredibly heavy that it frustrated the exact people it was meant to liberate. But the real story of the Bose L1 is not just the story of a speaker that looked like a black stick. It is the story of a war over who controls the sound on an American stage. And what happened when a company invented a new category, only to watch the market copy it, cheapen it, and leave the pioneer behind. Every week, we tell the stories of the American speakers, audio brands, and listening rooms that once shaped how people heard music and memory, and what happened when the market moved on. Subscribe if that history matters to you. The story begins not with nostalgia, but with a specific place, in a cramped garage workshop in Framingham, Massachusetts in 2003. To understand why the Bose L1 mattered, you have to understand the physical punishment of being a working musician in America at the turn of the 21st century. For decades, the standard live performance setup for a solo act, a coffeehouse acoustic duo, or a mobile DJ was a grueling exercise in weightlifting. A typical weekend gig meant loading two heavy wooden cabinets loaded with 15-inch woofers and horns into the back of a van, along with a separate power amplifier, a multi-channel mixing board, a spiderweb of heavy copper speaker cables, and at least two wedge-shaped floor monitors designed to beam sound directly up into the performer's face. The gear was heavy, industrial, and unforgiving. It required a strong back, a dedicated road case, and a constant, nerve-wracking war against audio feedback, that high-pitched squeal that erupts when a microphone picks up its own amplified sound from a nearby speaker. To prevent feedback, performers had to position themselves carefully behind their main speakers, turning the stage into a rigid acoustic minefield. Meanwhile, inside the corporate campus of Bose Corporation in Framingham, Massachusetts, company founder Amar Bose had been nursing a long-standing frustration. As an MIT professor and audio researcher, Bose had spent decades studying how sound actually moves through real rooms, not sterile anechoic chambers, but living rooms, auditoriums, and crowded clubs. He noticed a fundamental flaw in how live music was reproduced. Traditional sound systems threw a narrow beam of high-intensity sound straight ahead, deafening the people in the front row while leaving the people in the back struggling to hear. By the late 1990s, Bose engineering teams began quietly tackling a radical idea. What if a speaker system could abandon the traditional box altogether? What if, instead of a massive wooden cabinet sitting on a tripod, a live sound system could use a tall, slender, vertical column of small, closely spaced drivers to spread sound evenly across a room in a wide 180-degree arc? The concept was rooted in an old acoustic principle known as a line array, an arrangement of multiple identical drivers working together to direct sound waves into a flat, cylindrical wavefront rather than expanding outward in a spherical bubble. While line arrays were commonly used in massive outdoor concert venues using heavy, flown steel rigging, no one had successfully miniaturized the concept into a portable, self-contained unit that a single musician could carry into a neighborhood bar. The engineering hurdles were formidable. Packing dozens of tiny drivers into a narrow aluminum tube required complex digital signal processing, custom crossover networks, and an integrated subwoofer capable of handling the low-end weight without rattling the stage apart. The project consumed years of acoustic testing, computer modeling, and real-world trials. By 2002, surviving industry records and early trade reports indicate that Bose had quietly field-tested prototypes in small New England venues, putting the strange-looking columns in front of unsuspecting audiences who had no idea they were listening to a complete reinvention of live sound reinforcement. The question was no longer whether the physics worked in a Framingham laboratory. The question was whether the American market, steeped in decades of heavy, black-carpeted PV and JBL boxes, would accept a speaker that looked more like a modern sculpture than a piece of professional sound gear. The answer arrived in the autumn of 2003, when Bose officially released the system that would change portable audio forever. That first success did not solve the problem. It created a larger machine that now had to be fed. The solution arrived in the autumn of 2003 with the launch of the original Bose L1 Classic. To understand why this system shocked the professional audio industry, you have to look at what it replaced. A traditional live sound setup relies on separate components fighting for space on a stage. A mixing board, an electronic console used to combine, balance, and adjust volume levels from multiple microphones and instruments, feeds power into a heavy external amplifier, which pushes audio through floor monitors and main speakers. The Bose L1 threw that entire signal chain into reverse. Instead of a bulky box, the L1 used a slender vertical column array, an arrangement of multiple small drivers stacked vertically to project sound in a tight, uniform beam. Because the drivers were aligned in a linear row, they created what audio engineers call a cylindrical radiator loudspeaker, a design that projects sound waves outward in a wide, horizontal 180-degree fan, while dropping very little energy toward the ceiling or the floor. The physical result defied standard acoustic logic. Traditional speakers shoot sound out like a flashlight beam, losing volume rapidly the further you walk away. A line array, by contrast, drops in volume much more slowly as distance increases. This meant a performer could stand 2 feet away from the column without deafening themselves, while a listener in the back of a crowded room heard the exact same clarity. More importantly, it shattered the iron law of the microphone and the monitor wedge. In a traditional club setting, sound from a floor monitor bleeds directly back into an open vocal mic, creating a violent feedback loop, a howling, high-frequency squeal caused when a microphone endlessly re-amplifies its own signal. Because the Bose L1 column was placed directly behind the performer, the sound wave projected forward away from the microphone's dead zone, neutralizing feedback before it could start. The price tag, however, was staggering. The original 2000 Men 3 L1 Classic system debuted at an MSRP of $299. In period economic terms, that was more than double the cost of a respectable gigging setup from PV or Mackie. A solo singer-guitarist could buy a dependable Yamaha mixer, 2 powered plastic speakers, and all necessary cables for under $900. Yet independent musicians, acoustic troubadours, and mobile wedding DJs lined up to pay the premium. They were not buying specifications on a datasheet. They were buying time and physical relief. The L1 allowed a performer to unload their car, walk onto a stage, connect their guitar and mic directly into the integrated multi-channel bass unit, and achieve a balanced, room-filling mix in under 5 minutes. That sudden disruption horrified traditional live sound engineers. In bars and clubs across America, sound guys, the union and freelance technicians who controlled the mixing board and guarded the house PA system, viewed the Bose Tower as an existential threat. They hated its lack of physical knobs, its unorthodox look, and most of all, the way it stripped them of their authority. A performer could now walk in, set up their own column, and control their own stage mix without ever speaking to the house engineer. As adoption spread, the L1 moved past early skepticism and into critical industry visibility. By the mid-2000s, independent singer-songwriters playing the coffeehouse circuits of Austin and Seattle, church acoustic groups in the Midwest, and corporate event presenters in New York began adopting the system as a touring standard. The badge on the bass unit was not just a brand name. It was a declaration of independence for the working musician. That design triumph did not secure the market. It drew every competitor into the workshop. By the mid-2000s, the Bose L1 had moved out of experimental territory and into an era of overwhelming commercial scale. Across America, the sleek black column became the ultimate visual marker of the independent live performer. The ecosystem that formed around it was vast and intensely loyal. In the coffeehouse and acoustic circuits of Austin, Texas, and Seattle and Washington, singer-songwriters who once dreaded hauling heavy wood boxes now loaded a pair of cylindrical towers into the trunk of a compact sedan. In the suburban church circuits of the Midwest, worship leaders adopted the system to deliver clean vocals and acoustic guitars across wide sanctuaries without blasting the front rows or creating muddy reflections off drywall and glass. Simultaneously, a massive secondary market exploded within the American mobile DJ community. Wedding DJs, corporate event hosts, and small venue entertainers discovered that a pair of L1 systems, paired with Bose's proprietary tone match audio engines, digital signal processors designed to optimize instrument and vocal frequencies, could handle a room of 200 people with pristine clarity and 0 external power amplifiers. The scale of production grew to match the demand. Bose expanded its manufacturing and distribution channels, placing the L1 prominently inside authorized hi-fi showrooms, specialty music retailers, and direct-to-consumer sales channels across the United States. Showroom floors that once displayed towering stacks of Macintosh amplifiers and massive consumer loudspeakers now featured a single, elegant vertical column glowing under track lighting, demonstrating to astonished customers how a room could fill with sound from a source no wider than a human arm. The cultural moment was unmistakable. In thousands of American venues, every weekend night, the small black tower stood guard behind the performer, silent when unpowered, commanding when active. Yet, beneath the surface of this commercial peak, the system's physical design harbored a quiet friction. While the upper column arrays were impressively lightweight, the power stand, the bass unit containing the integrated amplifiers, electronic crossovers, and heavy low-frequency drivers, remained stubbornly heavy. For solo musicians who bought the L1 specifically to escape the physical toll of traditional PA gear, hoisting a dense, awkwardly shaped subwoofer bass into a car trunk after a 4-hour set was a persistent, back-breaking reminder of the laws of physics. That physical compromise did not stop the momentum, but in the American audio market, success on this scale never exists in a vacuum. Whenever one company proves that a new shape can print money, a dozen competitors are already taking apart the plastic, looking for a way to build it cheaper, lighter, and closer to the mass market wallet. That aesthetic and acoustic dominance quickly translated into institutional numbers. By the late 2000s, Bose was shipping tens of thousands of L1 systems annually across the United States. In Framingham, production lines that once focused primarily on consumer noise-canceling headphones and lifestyle home theater packages had to carve out dedicated industrial space just to keep up with back orders from specialty music instrument dealers and regional audio suppliers. The cultural blueprint had shifted completely. Before 2003, a solo act or acoustic duo playing a weekend gig was visually defined by the clutter around them. Microphones drooping over tangled mic stands, bulky floor wedges reflecting stage lights, and heavy wooden cabinets eating up valuable floor space. After the L1, the visual language of the American small-scale stage changed entirely. The sleek, black vertical column, became a signifier of modern, self-contained professionalism. It told the room that the performer valued clarity over brute force volume and elegance over industrial bulk. Yet this peak of commercial ubiquity also exposed a subtle vulnerability in Bose's market strategy, because the company priced the L1 systems at the absolute top tier of portable sound, often ranging from $1,800 to nearly $3,000 depending on the model and base module configuration. They left a massive, profitable vacuum beneath them. For every independent coffeehouse singer or mobile DJ who stretched their budget to buy an original Bose L1, there were 3 more working musicians playing weekend gigs in Midwestern bars who simply could not justify spending 2 months' worth of gig earnings on a single sound system. They wanted the slender silhouette, the feedback resistance, and the effortless setup of the column array. But they needed it at a price point that respected the harsh, economic reality of playing for door splits and tips. The tower stood tall on the American stage, commanding the room, capturing the eye, and setting the standard for portable acoustic design. But the very success of that shape was about to invite an onslaught of competitors who looked at the high price tag, looked at the high dollar, at the heavy bass unit, and realized the market was ripe for disruption. The solution arrived in the autumn of 2003 with the launch of the original Bose L1 Classic. To understand why this system shocked the professional audio industry, you have to look at what it replaced. A traditional live sound setup relies on separate components fighting for space on a stage, a mixing board, an electronic console used to combine, balance, and adjust volume levels from multiple microphones and instruments, feeds power into a heavy external amplifier, which pushes audio through floor monitors and main speakers. The Bose L1 threw that entire signal chain into reverse. Instead of a bulky box, the L1 used a slender, vertical column array, an arrangement of multiple small drivers stacked vertically to project sound in a tight, uniform beam. Because the drivers were aligned in a linear row, they created what audio engineers call a cylindrical radiator loudspeaker, a design that projects sound waves outward in a wide, horizontal 180-degree fan, while dropping very little energy toward the ceiling or the floor. The physical result defied standard acoustic logic. Traditional speakers shoot sound out like a flashlight beam, losing volume rapidly the further you walk away. A line array, by contrast, drops in volume much more slowly as distance increases. This meant a performer could stand 2 feet away from the column without deafening themselves, while a listener in the back of a crowded room heard the exact same clarity. More importantly, it shattered the iron law of the microphone and the monitor wedge. In a traditional club setting, sound from a floor monitor bleeds directly back into an open vocal mic, creating a violent feedback loop, a howling, high-frequency squeal, caused when a microphone endlessly re-amplifies its own signal. Because the Bose L1 column was placed directly behind the performer, the sound wave projected forward away from the microphone's dead zone, neutralizing feedback before it could start. The price tag, however, was staggering. The original 2003 L1 Classic system debuted at an MSRP of $2,999. In period economic terms, that was more than double the cost of a respectable gigging setup from Peavey or Mackie. A solo singer-guitarist could buy a dependable Yamaha mixer, 2 powered plastic speakers, and all necessary cables for under $900. Yet independent musicians, acoustic troubadours, and mobile wedding DJs lined up to pay the premium. They were not buying specifications on a datasheet. They were buying time and physical relief. The L1 allowed a performer to unload their car, walk onto a stage, connect their guitar and mic directly into the integrated multi-channel bass unit, and achieve a balanced, room-filling mix in under 5 minutes. That sudden disruption horrified traditional live sound engineers. In bars and clubs across America, sound guys, The union and freelance technicians who controlled the mixing board and guarded the house PA system viewed the Bose Tower as an existential threat. They hated its lack of physical knobs, its unorthodox look, and most of all, the way it stripped them of their authority. A performer could now walk in, set up their own column, and control their own stage mix without ever speaking to the house engineer. As adoption spread, the L1 moved past early skepticism and into critical industry visibility. By the mid-2000s, independent singer-songwriters playing the coffeehouse circuits of Austin and Seattle, church acoustic groups in the Midwest, and corporate event presenters in New York began adopting the system as a touring standard. The badge on the bass unit was not just a brand name, it was a declaration of independence for the working musician. That design triumph did not secure the market. It drew every competitor into the workshop. By the mid-2000s, the Bose L1 had moved out of experimental territory and into an era of overwhelming commercial scale. The American live audio market, notoriously stubborn and fiercely loyal to legacy brands, had capitulated to the black column. To understand the magnitude of this shift, you have to look at the specific American listening scenes that the L1 conquered. In the acoustic circuits of Nashville, Tennessee, and Austin, Texas, singer-songwriters who once dreaded the physical labor of hauling heavy wooden cabinets began loading a single cylindrical tower into the trunks of their compact sedans. In the suburban church circuits of the American Midwest, worship leaders adopted the system to deliver clean, intelligible vocals across wide, reverberant sanctuaries without deafening the front rows or relying on a dedicated sound engineer. Simultaneously, a massive secondary market exploded within the American mobile DJ community. Wedding DJs, corporate event hosts, and small venue entertainers discovered that a pair of L1 systems could handle a room of 300 people with pristine clarity. The technology evolved rapidly to capture this expanding audience. Bose replaced the original massive L1 Classic with the refined L1 Model 1, and soon after, the flagship L1 Model 2. The Model 2 introduced an even more advanced articulated array, a speaker design where the 24 small drivers inside the column are precisely angled in alternating directions to throw sound even wider across a room. This meant a single column could achieve nearly 180 degrees of horizontal acoustic coverage, filling the dead zones that traditional speakers left behind. Alongside the new columns, Bose introduced the Tone Match audio engine, a compact digital mixing processor designed to mount directly onto the side of the speaker column. Tone Match was not just a traditional mixer, it was a vast library of highly specific equalization presets. If a musician plugged in a Martin acoustic guitar or a Shure SM58 vocal microphone, the Tone Match engine instantly reshaped the frequency response to optimize that exact piece of equipment. It removed the guesswork from live sound. Because the slender column could not physically move enough air to produce deep, low-end frequencies, Bose paired the system with modular bass units. The B1 and later, the larger B2 subwoofer, a speaker designed to reproduce very low bass frequencies, connected directly to the power stand. For a solo acoustic player, one B1 was enough. For a mobile DJ playing hip-hop or electronic dance music, a B2 or multiple stacked B1 modules provided the necessary physical thump. The cultural moment was unmistakable. The visual language of the American small-scale stage changed entirely. Before 2003, a solo act or acoustic duo playing a weekend gig was visually defined by the clutter around them. Microphones drooping over tangled mic cables, bulky floor wedges reflecting stage lights, and heavy wooden cabinets eating up valuable floor space. After the L1, the stage became stark, clean, and minimalist. In a small American club where a singer used to be trapped behind a wall of monitor wedges, fighting feedback and guessing how they sounded to the crowd, The right column speaker could make the performer feel entirely connected to the room, close enough to the audience to believe the barrier between the stage and the floor had vanished. This was the ultimate promise of the L1. The performer heard exactly what the audience heard. The scale of production grew to match this new reality. Bose expanded its manufacturing and distribution channels, moving beyond specialty hi-fi showrooms and directly onto the main retail floors of American musical instrument giants like Guitar Center and Sam Ash. They dominated the glossy pages of the Sweetwater mail-order catalog, tens of thousands of L1 systems shipped across the United States. The performer unloaded the car, the performer set up the tower, the performer controlled the room. The sleek black vertical column became a signifier of modern, self-contained professionalism. It told the room that the musician valued clarity over brute force volume and elegance over industrial bulk. The ecosystem seemed invincible. The brand had successfully bridged the gap between audiophile engineering and the harsh, beer-soaked reality of the American gig. But as the product line expanded to meet this massive demand, the physical reality of the larger professional-grade systems began to create a quiet friction among the exact musicians the L1 was meant to liberate. The tower stood tall across America, but the commercial peak of the Bose L1 carried the seeds of its own disruption. By the early 2010s, the acoustic market had shifted underneath the Pioneer. The decline of American speaker empires rarely happens overnight. It begins with a small crack, a subtle friction point that loyal users notice long before the market registers a drop in sales. For the Bose L1, that first fracture was weight. Despite its slender profile and elegant stage presence, the power stand, the heavy bass unit containing the internal amplifiers, active crossovers, and low-frequency drivers, remained stubbornly heavy. For a solo acoustic musician who bought the L1 specifically to escape the physical toll of traditional wooden PA boxes, hoisting a dense, awkwardly shaped subwoofer bass into the trunk of a compact car after a grueling 4-hour weekend set was a persistent reminder of unresolved physics. Bose had solved the high-frequency dispersion problem, but it had left the heavy lifting intact. At the same time, the broader American audio market was being reshaped by a brutal economic force, Force 3, the relentless flood of imports, private labels, and good enough sound. For decades, American pro audio brands could command premium prices by leaning on domestic engineering reputation, specialized dealer networks, and proprietary acoustic research. But as global manufacturing supply chains matured overseas, competitors in Asia and Europe figured out how to build lightweight, injection-molded plastic speaker cabinets and efficient Class D amplifiers at a fraction of the cost. The turning point for portable column arrays arrived in the middle of the decade. Major live sound competitors, including Electro Voice, JBL, and Mackie, looked at the high price tag and physical weight of the Bose L1 and saw an open flank. They did not try to recreate Bose's exact proprietary spatial algorithms. Instead, they built functional, highly practical alternatives. In 2016, Electro Voice released the Evolve 50. It was a portable column system featuring a lightweight wooden subwoofer, a magnetic pole connection, and a lightweight aluminum column array. More importantly, it introduced a feature that Bose had stubbornly resisted incorporating into its primary professional line for years: onboard Bluetooth audio streaming and a wireless control app that let DJs adjust mixes directly from an iPad or smartphone walking around the venue. The market response was immediate and punishing. A working mobile DJ or weekend cover band could buy an Evolve 50 or a competing JBL column system for hundreds of dollars less than a flagship Bose L1 Model 2, while gaining wireless convenience, lighter transport weight, and modern digital mixing features built straight into the unit. The retreat began quietly on the showroom floors of American music instrument retailers. Specialty music stores that once displayed the Bose L1 as the undisputed centerpiece of their live sound department began clearing shelf space for competing columns. Sales representatives who once praised the purity of Bose's cylindrical dispersion now found themselves answering questions about Bluetooth pairing, lower price points, and lighter cabinet weights. The brand that had invented the portable column category was suddenly fighting a defensive war against competitors who had taken its shape, stripped away the luxury price tag, and added the digital conveniences modern American performers demanded. The system was still working. The market around it was rewriting the rules. As competitors flooded the market with cheaper, lighter, and feature-rich alternatives, Bose faced a strategic dilemma born of its own corporate identity. Throughout its history, the Bose Corporation operated as a privately held research entity, driven by engineering idealism, rather than quarterly Wall Street shareholder demands. Amar Bose had built the company on a singular philosophy: build the product right, price it according to the value of its acoustic innovation, and let the listening experience speak for itself. But in the hyper-competitive live sound market of the 2010s, that insular corporate structure became a liability. While agile competitors in California, Europe, and Asia rapidly iterated their product lines, dropping heavy Class A/B amplifiers for lightweight Class D modules, integrating multi-channel digital mixers with smartphone control, and adding Bluetooth connectivity as a standard factory feature, Bose moved with deliberate academic caution. The L1 Model 2 and its modular bass units remained mechanically brilliant, but they felt increasingly rigid compared to the plug-and-play convenience offered by newer rivals. The retail landscape in America was transforming beneath them. Big box music instrument chains and online direct-to-consumer distributors were rewriting how working musicians bought gear. A regional gigging musician browsing Sweetwater, calm, or walking down the aisles of a guitar center could compare specifications side by side on a computer screen. When a competing column system offered built-in Bluetooth, wireless app control, lighter weight, and a lower price tag, the traditional prestige of the Bose badge began to lose its commercial gravity. The final chapter of this market shift did not arrive with a dramatic bankruptcy or a sudden factory fire. It arrived through quiet erosion. The showroom floor displays changed, the dealer orders slowed. The regional sound suppliers stopped stocking backup columns. The touring musicians packed lighter gear. The old heavy bass units gathered dust in garage corners. The Pioneer was left behind. The physical manufacturing runs of the original Bose L1 systems have long since ended, but the design footprint they left across the American soundscape remains permanent. When Bose eventually replaced the classic architecture with newer generations, introducing lighter materials, integrated wireless streaming, and more compact enclosures, the market had already fundamentally shifted. Today, the portable column array is no longer a radical anomaly pioneered by a single Massachusetts laboratory. It is an absolute industry standard found in every major American music instrument retailer, mobile DJ catalog, and AV installation showroom. Yet within the vintage audio preservation community, and among dedicated working musicians, a thriving secondary market keeps the original hardware alive. On regional enthusiast forums, private social media trading groups, and specialty repair benches, collectors and gigging veterans actively hunt down early generation L1 systems, classic power stands, and original cylindrical aluminum columns. They do this for a specific functional reason that bypasses mere sentimentality. An early Bose L1 system, maintained with careful electronic servicing and paired with its modular bass units, can still accomplish what many cheaper, modern plastic imitators struggle to replicate: an authentic, wide dispersion acoustic image that fills a room with physical presence, without relying on harsh digital equalization or brittle plastic resonance. The original aluminum columns were machined and assembled with a structural rigidity that modern cost reduction measures rarely permit in mass-market pro audio gear. They were built to last decades on the road, surviving cramped vans, spilled stage drinks, and relentless weekend loading cycles. Today, if you trace the physical address of the old manufacturing lines and engineering test spaces in Framingham, Massachusetts, you will find modern office spaces, parking lots, and corporate expansions bearing little visible trace of the acoustic experiments that once reshaped how a singer stood on a stage. The original retail showrooms that displayed a single glowing black column under track lighting have given way to online warehouse fulfillment and digital comparison charts. Yet a surprising footnote remains written into the DNA of modern stage design. Every time a solo acoustic artist steps up to a slender column speaker in a coffee house in Seattle, a church in Ohio, or a club in Austin, they are performing inside a spatial architecture that Amar Bose and his engineering team forced the American music industry to accept over 2 decades ago. The market always absorbs a revolution, strips away the luxury price tag, lightens the materials, and scatters the pieces across 1,000 competing brands. Convenience wins the showroom floor. Price undercuts the pioneer. And yet, somewhere in an American basement, a heavy metal bass unit rests beside a pair of silver aluminum columns, the grill cloth slightly worn, the badge intact, waiting for the power switch to click and the room to fill with sound. One more song. See you in the next video.